Hello and welcome to the 21st Century Writer, a podcast devoted to helping you, the indie author, with the self-publishing journey, particularly working on the mindset of the indie author in this new world of self-publishing. My name is Diane Patterson. I'm a novelist and blogger, and with me is my co-host.
I'm Hannah Steenbock, a German author and coach.
And today our very special guest is Annetta Ribken. Annetta is an editor who has worked with several award-winning authors, including my friend Stacy Green, on their books, and she has worked exclusively with indie authors. And we would like to talk to her about the process of editing your work, why it's necessary, and really how indie authors are hurting themselves by not hiring more editing. So thank you for joining us today, Annetta.
You're welcome. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Well, actually, it's the evening in Germany. But,
well, good morning.
That's fine. It's still sunny out there.
Okay. So part of the reason, I'll give a little the backstory here, part of the reason that I really wanted to have an editor on this podcast is that I have picked up a number of indie books recently that shall remain nameless and have closed them within the first chapter, having realized that absolutely no editing happened in this book. And it is really obvious when a book hasn't been edited. One of the things that I hear indie authors say all the time on writers' boards is, I don't need an editor, I have 3 beta readers and spell check. I have news for you. 3 beta readers and a spell check is not equivalent to editing, but we're going to get to that. So, Annetta, please tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will get into the discussion of the different levels of editing and why we really need to have editing in our books. So, Annetta, take it away.
All right. Well, I learned to read when I was 3. We have that in common, Diane. And yeah, so I've been reading a long time, but I've also, through high school, I edited the school newspaper, the yearbook, all the stuff that nerdy book girls do. I wrote a newsletter for a major health insurance company. I've edited over 150 books for indie authors, and I absolutely love my job. And I totally agree with you that 3 beta readers and spell check doesn't cut it.
So how did you begin editing? I mean, editing fiction is a whole different beast than editing newspapers or technical writing, which is actually my first job out of college, was being a technical writer and getting edited. So how did you get into fiction?
I started off as a writer, not an editor. I participated in a number of writers groups way back, when we were chiseling on stone tablets. But I cut my teeth in critiquing a lot of work in the workshops, and I learned more, I think, from people critiquing my work than the other way around. But either way, I cut my teeth on writing flash fiction for the most part and started moving into a longer fiction. I took a couple of college courses on story. I wrote a lot of copy, and I just kind of fell into editing, not by accident really, but really kind of by accident.
Okay. So, let's talk about editing. I may have the wrong impression here, but there's basically 3 general types of editing that I hear the most about.
Right.
One is developmental editing.
Developmental editing is taking a look at the total story, the entire story, and evaluating the plot, the characterization, the narrative flow, and the basic story structure. Not all good storytellers are good writers, and not all good writers are good storytellers. There's a structure in place for a reason. You want to communicate your ideas, your story to the reader, and in order to do that, you have to have a structure. So that's what developmental editing does. It looks at the big picture. And then you would move on to copy editing, or line editing. It depends. And the terms are really confusing to people who don't, are not familiar with it. But in copy and line editing, the editor goes through and makes sure that your words say what you mean and mean what you say. They also take a look at punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, and that type of thing. Then the third level would be the proofreading, which is for the typos and misspellings, punctuation, and that type of thing. Ideally, your manuscript should go through all 3 levels before you put it out there. You want to make sure with the developmental editing that your story structure is sound and carries the story, that you get across what you're trying to get across. And then the copy editing and the proofreading are polishing it up for that final shine.
Okay. So one of the things that I often hear people say is that they work with a developmental editor before they start writing.
Yeah, some do.
But what is that? Someone gives you an outline? Someone tells you the story they want to write? I mean, how does this?
Well, yeah, they'll give you usually I don't work with scripts that are under 30,000 words for that type of developmental editing, and it's very time consuming, so you're working so closely with the author. I only take on a certain amount of those projects because of the time involvement. If you have a story idea, you have a basic outline, you know where you start, you know where you want to finish, but you can't quite connect the two, that's where a developmental editor will come in and, usually I ask the author a lot of questions. What do you want to happen between here and there? What is your story goal? Because that's the most important thing. There's certain plot points you have to hit, and I've worked with a lot of authors that take their story from this, seed of an idea to an actual full-blown story.
Okay. So,
does that mean you primarily work with people who plot their stories in detail?
No. As a writer, I guess I have to admit my dirty little secret. As a writer, I'm a pantser. I really try to incorporate plotting, and it's worked out really well. But it can be difficult to figure out what is the process that works for you, because everybody does it different. So you can buy 10,000 books that tell you, well, plot it this way, plot it on cards, plot it on the wall, write an essay, whatever it is. Every person is different, and not one way works well for everybody. So my plotting is kind of weird, but it works for me. I work with pantsers, plotters. It doesn't matter to me, but I will make you plot out. I will make you plot.
Yeah, I'm a total pantser. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, I do make you plot because it really helps you focus in on what it is that you want to do. Because as a pantser, and I know you know this, Hannah, the characters or the setting or the donkey or whatever can really pull you off course of the story that you want to tell, because that little tangent is so fascinating. Yeah. So what I'll do when I read over your book is I'll tell you I want to plot on what you wanted to write and what you actually did write, and then we'll compare the two and mesh them up. So yeah,
I know exactly. So my plotting basically is I have my characters, I know the basic structure of the story, and while I write, the individual scenes sort of start popping up, and sometimes I get a nasty surprise, like in the story I'm writing right now. One of the villains actually villain. How do you say that? She turned herself around and became a non-villain, and it's like, come on, lady, you can't do that to me.
You need villains.
The story structure.
That's the fun part about being a pantser, is that you can go and chase off.
The structure still remains the same. I just need to create a different villain, an arch villain that has been in the background, and you have him step out. But the basic story structure remains the same. So I'm happy with it. I don't mind this too much. I know there's
this whole fight between, pantsing or plotting. I'm really kind of over it. Because it's what works for you. It doesn't matter if you're a pantser or a plotter. One way is not better than the other.
And I think I really, if I understood you correctly, you would make sure the structure still works, even if something like that happens, even if the villain suddenly decides to...
We would work it out to where it worked. Yeah. I can tell probably in the first, I'm going to say the first 2 pages of a book whether the writer was a pantser or a plotter. I can tell right away.
Wow.
Yes, I bet you can. I have. I'm sure you can, because I believe we start books very differently. A lot of plotters sort of take people into their world and explain it, and the pantsers just jump right in and
the pantsers really have no fear. You can't have any fear when you're writing. You have to lay it all out there. If you're scared, you got to get over it.
Okay, so
I love that mindset.
writers deliver to you? I mean, one of the comments I've gotten, and I know a number of writers have gotten from their editors, is, wow, this is so clean. And of course, I think that my book is a mess. That's why I'm like, help, help. What is it that writers give you when they give you a draft? I mean, for the most part.
Oh, okay. You mean first draft?
Like what level? Yeah, I mean, first draft, like, what are we doing with this here? Or, I think this is ready to go. Could you spell check it?
Where's my hammer?
I'm making the spell check jokes a lot today, folks, because we'll get to that in a little bit.
The level of your manuscript when you submit it to an editor really determines the rate, at least as far as for me. I'm not going to speak for every editor out there. If you send me a first draft fresh off your PC, it's going to be a mess, because all first drafts are a mess. They're supposed to be. And I'm going to charge you a lot of money to clean that up. If you do a lot of the work on your own, you can self-edit to a certain extent. You get a better rate. So if you know how to self-edit, what to look for, how to correct it as far as you can, that will save you money in the long run. I prefer to work on, well, actually I'll work on anything. I don't care, because I love it. I absolutely love it. I love taking a raw story and seeing it transform into something absolutely magnificent. That is what I live for. I do recommend you don't submit your first draft. At least go through a basic checklist. I actually have a self-editing course that people can take to know what to look for, because it is a long list and it is a lot of work. The thing is, you're not going to see all the errors. You're not going to see all the missteps. You're not going to see any of that when you're editing yourself. That's why you do need an editor. So a third party that is not connected to you, that did not give birth to you, that does not pay your bills, so they can give you honest feedback about what your story needs. That kind of critique is invaluable, because those lessons you learn when you work with your editor, you take on to the next book. So your next first draft is cleaner than your first one, and you just get better and better. It's a team effort. It's not just, somebody with a red pen wanting to rip your soul out and eat it.
One of the things, because I know a lot of writers use the book self-editing.
Fiction writers.
I'll have a link to that in the show notes, but I mean, I have it somewhere here. But it's
Brené Brown and Dave King, self-editing for fiction writers. I have it on my desk.
Thank you.
Yes.
A lot of writers seem to think that self-editing is reading a sentence out loud to make sure that it's grammatically correct, and then moving on to the next next sentence. Whoops, look at me needing to edit. Checking for how many times they use adverbs, that kind of thing.
It's
What
part
is
of it.
that is, but I would say that editing for the story, making sure that you're
Yes.
on
Here's
line of the story is a way more important than how many times I use actually.
That's very true. You made me snort. The thing about editing for story is you, the writer, have lived with this inside you for how many weeks, months, years it's taken you to write this story. You have lived with these characters. You have probably thought about nothing else for the last 6 months but this story. What you're trying to write, it's all in your head. You see it so clear, and your job is to put it on the paper. But the thing is, it doesn't translate all onto the paper. And when you look at it as a writer, you look at your book, you're going to see it in its entirety. You're not going to notice that, she had green eyes in chapter 1 and brown eyes in chapter 17. You're not going to see that, your plot went into a totally illogical place and you have to bring it back. You don't know what scenes. You don't see that because you already have the story in your head. That's where the editor comes in. And you want somebody to give you an honest opinion. I mean, I say it right on my website. You don't hire me to blow smoke up your ass. You hire me to tell you how to fix this story or how to make it better. And that's my job.
Okay. So how long have you been doing editing for indie authors?
I have been editing since 2006.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So really before the self-pub
Yep.
EPUB revolution. Okay. So you mentioned living with a story for 6 months or years. That's not really happening now for a lot of authors. Have you found that the drive to get stuff out faster is helping or hurting or?
I was just talking about this yesterday, as a matter of fact. Quantity doesn't always mean quality. That doesn't mean that there are not people out there who are fast writers and are very good at it, because there are. But those people seem to be the outliers. They're the one, they're blessed. I wish I could sit down and write 10 books in a year. I wish I could. But I'm not built that way, and not everybody is. But this push to get a backlist out there to start making money is behind all of this. And, it is true, the faster you put out material and the more material you have out there, the more money you can potentially make. But the thing is, if somebody picks up one of your books and it's not well written and it hasn't been edited, they're not going to go buy the rest of them. I would. If I picked up a book and you suck, that's your one and only chance. Every book you put out there is your one and only chance to grab the reader. Yeah. So you have to make sure that what you put out is a professional product.
Yes. I had that experience with someone who was part of a writing group, and she had the first book of her series out for 99 cents, and I thought, yeah, well, just gonna check it out, gonna support her a little. And the truth is, it was one of those books that I couldn't finish. I put it down after the 3rd chapter. I really gave it a chance. It was all tell. There was no show in there. There was no dialogue in there. I couldn't even get a drift of the story. And this lady is putting out books three a year, and I know I will not buy a single one of her books. And she's complaining she doesn't have enough sales. She keeps putting out books. I'm not sure if she's using an editor or not. I have no idea. But it's exactly what you said. This is one of those books where my heart bleeds when I read stories like that, because I know there's a compelling story in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's potential in there, and she wastes it because she doesn't know how to write.
No, it's true. I see it all the time too. You know, you have to, if you're going to make writing your career, it's not a get-rich scheme. It's not, let me write anything, throw it up on Amazon, and sit back and wait. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot of hard work. It's like any other career. It's like any other business. You are a small publisher when you self-publish. You are a business. You have to treat yourself with the respect that you would give a business and invest in yourself. Invest in, the good book covers, the formatting, but most of all the editing, because even your book can have the most beautiful cover. It can be formatted for the angels, but if the story sucks, nobody's going to read it, and they're not going to pick up anything else you write either, because your book tells you right there. You don't appreciate, you don't believe in yourself enough to invest in something that would make you better, then why should anybody else?
And it is craft. It is definitely craft.
Oh, it
You
does.
need to study the craft. You need to write lots and get feedback on it and editing. And coming back to this writer that I talked about, I actually thought about returning the book. And I haven't, and I didn't because she knew I had gotten it, and I knew she could. She would know because I buy through the German Amazon, and I knew she would know that I had returned it, so I didn't. But because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. But that was one of the books I seriously thought about returning. I have not returned a single ebook. But I think if you get a lot of returns on your ebook, that would be a real
even though your reviews might not say anything, if you're getting a lot of returns, there might be a little bit of a problem somewhere.
So there's actually the flip side of the publishing really fast, and that is, I have a friend, a fellow writer. I don't actually know how long this work is, but it's either a long short story or a short novella. I'm not sure the exact length. And she has gone through about 3 editing rounds on it. I'm not sure exactly. Do you do that? I mean, what? I'm not sure that it's worth it for a short novella. I want to tell her, move on to the next thing.
Without reading the material, of course, it depends on what level it's at. If she was at a basic, first draft, I can see 3 rounds. 3 rounds is usually, because you can edit the voice right out of a story. You got to know when to stop and walk away. And, 3 rounds on a short novella seems a lot, but without seeing the material, I really can't say. On a novel, I will say we usually go about 3 rounds. That's the average, about 3 rounds, and you can pretty much clear up a lot. There are exceptions, of course.
If someone turns in a polished, clean manuscript, you probably need around less.
Right. It's not. We clear up the major problems in a developmental edit, and then I do a certain amount of copy editing and line editing because I'm anal and I can't help myself. I don't charge for it or anything because it's just me. I'm not a copy editor, so we'll clear up the major problems or issues with the story, and both me and the writer will get to a point where we're happy with the story, and then it'll go on to copy editing. After that, it's out of my hands.
So I know it. Why don't you think writers can really edit themselves?
you're too close
Put it
to.
in a drawer. Come back to it in a month or whatever.
Even then, your brain will still fill in the blanks for you, and you won't even realize it. The first step in any edit, when you self-edit, any edit, the first step that I recommend is that you do put it in a drawer for at least a couple of weeks and step away. Nobody ever does that. I know most people
I
Put
do.
it up on Amazon and start making money.
Yeah, slap it up there and let her, sell me millions of copies. Well, but I wish it worked that way.
No, I actually put stories away and I give them a
Don't look
couple
at
of
it
weeks.
for a couple of weeks, and then when you take it out again, you will be amazed at what pops out at you. But you still won't see it all because your brain, you conceived it, you've lived with it, you've seen it a million times, and your brain will fill that in automatically. It's actually, that's science. It's neuroscience. That's my story, and I'm sticking.
It's good.
So we've been in the self-pub revolution for about 4 years now, I think. No, well, I had my Kindle in 2009, I think. So
I don't
You're
know.
an early adopter.
this kid is in second grade or something by now.
I know, right?
I'm still seeing the same. I mean, I need to be better about doing look inside. I haven't done that nearly enough.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
So there's clearly they haven't even run it through spell check level, which I'm just astonished by. There's they haven't run it past a proofreader level. I see a lot that clearly haven't gone through a copy editor. Now, a copy editor, for instance, I started reading this one book that had 2 major problems at the beginning, and I'll start with the copy editing one. The author used a word, and I don't remember which one it was, but it was like indubitably or, abracadabra, something like that, twice on the same page. And I said, she said indubitably, and then later on he said indubitably.
Oh, no, please.
And I looked at that and I said, you didn't edit this. You didn't get this edited. Pass. I'm not going to invest any more of my time in this. How much are you seeing of that when you pick up books?
Enough to where I don't pick up a lot of books anymore. My job is reading. It includes a lot of reading. So with my schedule, any reading that I do on my off time is usually a craft book. Sometimes a book will catch my eye on Amazon and I'll go and look, but I always click to look inside to see who their editor is. All my secrets are coming out.
I don't always credit my editor.
I look to see if it's even been edited, if they have an editor listed,
Right.
And then I read the first sample, and honestly, besides my own clients, and I'm not bragging just because, they are really I have some excellent writers they're all excellent on my roster. Besides my clients, I really don't read much outside of that circle.
And then, of course, the major one that I see and has gotten me to figuratively throw books across the room the most is a lack of developmental editing. And the way that I would describe I find this is, as I've mentioned on previous podcasts, it's just one darn thing after another. Like I mentioned with this one book, which came from Amazon Publishing, of all places. It was an urban fantasy, and they go out and they deal with a ghost, and then they go back to the house and they have a fight, and then they go out and deal with the vampire, and then they go back to the house and have a fight. And I'm like, where is this going? How would you help someone in that instance?
You mean where they've got a book out and they want to...
Well, no, I mean, hopefully someone would deal with this. I mean, again, I was very disappointed that this came from Amazon, and it really didn't feel edited. It didn't feel structured. In a genre novel that usually has, urban fantasy usually has pretty good structure.
I mean, just hypothetically, if you get a story
Yeah,
that is so
hypothetically, not
disappointing.
with a book that's already out there. But here I hand you my urban fantasy, and first my characters go and deal with a ghost, and then they have an argument, and then they deal with the vampire, and then they have the argument.
Well, we're going to have a conversation.
Okay, yeah, take me through, how do you work with a writer who says, here, look at my book, I love my book. Edit my book, and then...
Actually, most writers that submit their manuscripts to me are like, I know this probably sucks so bad, you know, I need help. The clients that come to me usually know that they need a developmental editor, you know, so they're open to any and all suggestions. What I'll usually do is when you submit to me, I want the first 2 chapters and the last 2 chapters, and I want a synopsis. And the reason I ask for that is because I used to go off of a first chapter, but that doesn't tell you in an evaluation whether or not the story goes all the way through the manuscript. So I started asking for the first 2 and the second 2 to see if you had a starting place and if you have an end place. You know, I'll evaluate the first, I would say, 1,500 to 3,000 words for nothing, for free, you know, when we're in the evaluation stage. And I can usually tell from that amount of material if you can put a sentence together, if there could be a basic story structure in place that we can work from. You know, I look at the character, if you've incorporated dialogue, how the narrative flow goes, if the writing style catches me. And then, you know, if we decide that we're a fit, we go ahead into the editing process. So I'll take the book in its entirety and read it through the first time as a reader. You know, make notes of what strikes me that might need some work, or what appeals or doesn't appeal, or what fits or what doesn't fit. If you're a pantser or a plotter, you know, I kind of get my game plan into place. And then I read it through again for more detail, making more notes. After I get through with what I do with it, I'll send it back to the writer with an evaluation letter. I use a content management service, so everything's uploaded in the same place, and we can both see what's going on. And then there's markups all through the manuscript where, you know, you did this well, you have to change this, I don't think she would say that, you know, what's the point of it, you know what I mean? So yeah. There's all kinds of inline comments. I'll send them back to the writer, and you know, when I give a writer an evaluation, this is how I look at it. This is your story. It's not my story. I have no ego in this at all. I'm going to tell you what I think will make this manuscript even better. Take it up a level or 2. I will tell you what I think is the issue. It's up to you to fix it. If you agree with me, we're BFFs. If you don't, that's fine too, because this is your story. It's not mine. If you don't think that's going to work, then don't use it. You know, that's really up to the writer. If it's something I believe in strongly that you need to change, then I will let you know very nicely. But in the end, the writer has the last word. I think that's one of the biggest difference between indie editing and traditional publishing editing. I have no, I probably shouldn't say this, but I have no power over you. You make up your decision about your book. You know, I can't tell you you won't publish this if you don't change it. You know, that it is all your responsibility. I'll tell you that this will never work in a million years, or, you know, you really need to change your name, or whatever it is, whatever editorial recommendation I make, it's up to you. You have the last word, and I think that's the way it should be. But that's pretty much our editing process. We'll go through those rounds back and forth until, you know, you're happy, I'm happy, we're all happy. It's a great book. Let's go. You know.
So what is the issue? And I have seen this repeatedly, and this may actually be an actual quote, but when authors say, oh, I don't need that, I have 3 beta readers and spell check on Microsoft Word. What are they not getting out of the process? Because the beta readers...
Oh my God. Somebody really said that?
Yeah. And I believe that they were talking... Now, I'm going to be honest. If you are doing, you know, an erotic short story a week or whatever, you probably don't need to be edited. That is purely a volume business. I'm going to say that I'm going to plant my flag in the sand, or I don't know what the metaphor is, and say, if you're working on a novel, you need to have an editor. What are the problems that people face saying, no, I got my beta readers, that'll do. They give me everything an editor would give me.
Not unless they're an editor.
So, I mean, a reader, a fan of your work,
right,
is going to, you know, read through it and say, oh, goody, yay, you have John and Jane back together again. Read.
Do they know?
Well, there's better readers and better readers. I mean,
and I'm not saying a reader's opinion of your book is important. It is. But as far as the technical aspect of writing a story, you know, do they have the training for that? No, not really. And the other thing, I think the major thing that people are missing from not employing an editor is that is you learn so much, and I do as an editor too. You learn so much when you work together as a team on your book. You will learn so much about the writing process. You will learn so much about how to tell a story if you have hired a competent editor. And those lessons last long after you're done with this book. You know, you'll take them with you to the next one and the next one, and you will learn something new from every editing experience. That's one of the major things that people miss out on when they don't employ an editor. Plus, you're going to lose sales. You know,
but Annetta, I have written 15 novels since January 2nd. What are you possibly going to tell me about the writing of a book?
Well,
you have plenty of experience.
You know, Miss Diane, with that attitude, I don't think we can work together.
If I had only written 15 novels.
Honestly, if somebody comes to me with an attitude like that, that they're not going to, you know, learn anything from the process anyway, you've already closed your mind to it. So, you know, I'm not going to waste your time and money, and I'm not going to waste my time either.
Well, that was certainly something I noticed in traditional publishing with a number of authors, some of whom are notorious for this, who clearly got to book 6 and had made a couple of million and said, yep, I don't need an editor anymore.
Yeah, I probably read a bunch of those books, yeah. Yep. And, you know, your work pretty much speaks for itself. I have some hardcovers around here of my favorite authors who have gone on to, you know, make millions of dollars, and I will admit that they're full of red pen marks.
Well, I love it.
In one particularly notorious case, and I'm sure that we're probably thinking of the same person, it doesn't seem to have hurt sales at all.
Oh, no. Well, once you get to that level, I guess you could pretty much do anything you want. You know, if you're bringing in millions and millions of dollars a year, I guess.
And I think...
if that's the legacy you want to leave, if that's what you want out there, you know what I mean? I would be embarrassed to put out something less than professional, even if I was $1 million. You know what I mean? Yeah. No.
I think they're fans, and I once offered... I'm not doing it again. I offered to review a story about dragons, and again, that author shall remain nameless.
Yeah, because we don't want to get sued.
Oh, I don't want to hurt her. I mean,
I know.
She's a nice person. So I read the book, and she has quite a number of reviews that are mostly glowing. And I read this book, and I couldn't believe the number of reviews and the average she has on them, because while it was an interesting story, it would have needed serious editing to make it really brilliant. And let me put it that way. And so I was stuck. What do I write for the review? I mean, I got the copy in exchange for the review. So I thought, what in the world am I going to do? So I came up with reasons to write a 3-star review, and I showed it to her. And I said, I will only post this if you agree with it, because this is the best I can do for you in your book. And and I have to admit that, she had the courage to say, go ahead and post it.
Oh, well, that's good.
That's good.
Kudos to her. So,
well, here's my thing about reviews. I don't write book reviews anymore. For me, in my job, it's a conflict of interest. Who's going to believe me? You know what I mean?
absolutely.
You know, so I just stay away from that. The other thing about book reviews is they help you get noticed on Amazon, but I know, me personally, I don't buy books based on reviews. I'll look at them, and a lot of times I look at the negative reviews just to see what it was that I didn't like, you know, but I don't base my book buying on somebody else's opinion, because each book is unique to the reader, you know,
Yes.
so your interpretation won't be the same as mine, you know, because we both have different perspectives. You know, and as from a writing point of view or an editing point of view, why are you even reading your own reviews? You know,
I mean, I do leave some
walk
for
away.
authors I love.
I've seen so much, bad behavior over reviews.
Mhm.
Look, if you can't take a critique, you better find another line of business, because, you know, not everybody's going to like everything you write. Not everybody's going to like anything you write.
I think it was Noel Coward who said, I can deal with any review so long as it's unqualified praise.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if that kind of stuff is going to, you know, get your panties in a bunch, don't read them. Don't. Just don't.
Yeah.
And I have a policy of not leaving a review if I can't say anything positive, so I don't. And I post them under my real name, so there's no connection to my pen name.
Right.
I have my Amazon accounts under my real name, and I don't tell people my real name. I mean, they can find it out. It's in the copyright notice, because that's German law. It's required. I need to put my full name and address into the copyright notice. So there it is.
Thank you, Germany.
I know, right?
It's the press law. I can't change it.
No,
it's like,
I must be, I think, the only female author I know who uses her real name. Mostly because most of the other ones I know write romance, and apparently they get some weird people.
I can
yeah,
imagine.
romance
Yeah.
will go under another different pen name, and I think I'm pretty safe because I write mostly in English and I live in Germany, so I'm somewhat removed from the weirdos.
So how do writers find you? I'll be honest, I used an editor of a level of editing on one of my books, and it came back, and it was someone who had come recommended, and I looked at that, and she had put in stuff like, she laughed, comma, open quote, start of quotation, and I wrote her back and I said, you cannot laugh a sentence. Why did you... I didn't write that. You put that in. Why would you put that in? I would never write such a thing. Needless to say, haven't used her again. How do people find you? How do you find people?
Oh, well, I'm all over the internet. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter that much. It's a time suck. Social media is a time suck anyway, but usually I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, there's an About Me account, there's Instagram, there's, I don't know what the hell, there's so many things.
I mean, do you advertise, or is it purely word of mouth at this point?
I'm listed on the Kindle boards. I've had a couple of people come to me through that, but mostly, yeah, it's word of mouth.
Yeah. And do people call you and say, I found your name in a book that I really loved and I would like to work with you. Does that happen a lot?
Yep. Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I love my job.
So, are there
And I suppose
are there
Huh?
being a coach, knowing about dealing with clients, I suppose you choose your clients. You don't work with everyone.
Correct. I
yeah,
am my own boss. And I had somebody approach me not too long ago, and their manuscript wasn't ready for an edit. Now, I guess I could have taken her money and run, but, I was upfront and honest, and I told her, you're not ready for an edit yet. These are some of the things that you need to work on, and when you do, come back and see me. And, that's usually how I handle that. If you're not ready, I'm going to tell you, you know.
That makes
There's
sense.
no point in putting either one of us through that kind of torture.
And are you looking for a certain mindset in your clients?
Oh no, I I pretty much evaluate for story. If you have a story in there and I think I can get it out of you, then we can work together. I've worked in so many different genres, science fiction, urban fantasy, paranormal, erotica, romance, though that's not my forte. It usually runs into the spec fic type of thing. That's my favorite. But historical, done literary,
well, I
nonfiction,
know you've worked with Stacy on mystery thrillers or crime,
Yep.
I guess.
And
Yes.
do your clients need a certain attitude, like a willingness to
Oh, definitely. Definitely. An open mind, you know, an open mind, leave your ego at the door, and we will do absolutely wonderful things together. You know, everybody's got attitude. I can deal with that. I got one of my own.
I think we need a certain attitude as business people and writers and editors.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, definitely.
we need this. We can do this. We need the confidence to go ahead, but we
Exactly.
also need to be teachable.
Yep, yep, exactly. If you're closed-minded or you're rude, there's probably somebody else out there that's a better fit.
Yeah.
Look how tactful I am.
What is your most exciting and inspiring story that you have of a client?
You mean from editing?
Yeah.
There's so many. I have so many proud moments of, you know, developmental editors are pretty much the shadow people. You you have an impact, but you don't want the impact to be felt. It all comes from the writer. Um, I'm extremely proud of Patty Larson. She writes YA, and she's won so many awards for her stories. Got a traditional publishing deal. Jordan Hawk writes male paranormal romance. She's won tons of awards. Stacy, like Diane said, with mystery and thriller, she's won awards for her work. Every time one of my people does well like that, I am just happy dancing all over the kitchen. I don't have to have the award, but seeing them do well, speak to what, and nobody has to know it but me and them. It
Yeah.
speaks to the teamwork that went into putting out this wonderful story. Aaron Galvin is another one. He just wrote a story called The Grave of Lainey Grace. Oh my God, I cried through that whole freaking story. It's so beautiful. But when they pull something like that out of the work that we do together, that is the thrill for me. That is the thrill. When I see that story and I see it take off, I'm like, this is awesome.
So you have gotten work that you've said, wow, this is good, but this could be better, and the resulting work is such that it has more of an emotional impact on you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It,
Because I mean, one of the things that, again, I keep reading on places like K-boards, I'll just put it there, is I don't want to get edited. It will kill my story.
Well,
you must have seen this. I'm not making this up.
no, you're not making it up. You're not.
I had it happen.
I don't know what kind of experience those people have had with other editors that they come to this conclusion, because it's ridiculous. You can edit the voice out of a story. You most certainly can. But if you're not editing in the first place, I don't understand what you're losing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At least give it a chance. You know, if I make a suggestion that I think is going to deepen a story and you don't exactly think that that might work, well, try it. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to the original and tell me to go take, you know what. I promised I wouldn't swear, because sometimes I swear a lot.
Okay, I'll just bleep it out later.
But,
One of my favorite phrases to use. I keep crediting Hemingway. I think it's Hemingway, and he talks about the bleep detector, which is knowing when your work needs work. You know, not everything that flows out is not perfect.
I don't care who you are. Your first draft of anything is going to be shit. I'm sorry if I'm hurting your feelings, but that is the truth. Any first draft of anything I write is crap. You know, I don't.
Do you send your stuff to another editor?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, I had this thing happening. I was part of an anthology that eventually didn't happen. It fell through, but the editor of the anthology managed to snag a well-known, famous editor, and he went through our stories, and he was so insulting in his comments about my story, and he told me to scrap those parts that were necessary to understand how it works. And I basically I cried one day because I was so furious. I cried a second day because I get mad what he did to my story. And eventually I read through his comments, and I had the feeling he didn't understand why I was putting things into some places, and there was no way I could discuss it with him. It was like we were getting this one editing pass, and it was take it or leave it, and I was kind of relieved that the anthology never happened, because that was my absolutely worst experience with an editor. It was completely respectless. It was completely arrogant, and I admit it. I self-published the story last year in a collection of my own stories, and I've had feedback from many readers that that was the story that impacted them most. So, and oh God, I went through it.
I'm really sorry that you went through that. The thing is, when you choose an editor to work with, you want somebody that meshes with your personality. Yes. Somebody that you can work with. Some people, you know, I'm not harsh, but I am honest.
Yes.
None of it is meant personally. In an edit, you cannot take any of that personally, because it's not about you. It's about the story. And I know it's hard as a writer to make that distinction, because you are your stories. I don't see any point in being rude. I don't see any point in being unprofessional. I don't get that. I know there are a lot of people that say they've had some bad experiences with editors, and, you know, I'm sorry for that, because they're definitely not all like that, you know.
No, and I did have a really good experience for the one novel that I wrote in German with a German co-author, and we found small press to publish it, and they actually paid an editor for it. She later complained that the money certainly wasn't up to what she did, but I could easily take her suggestion. She did a fantastic job, and I was very happy with what she did. And, so I know how good editing feels like, and I have an editor / beta reader. He's not a professional editor, but he edits a lot, and he really helps me make my stories a lot better. He has
Yeah, a good
great
editor
suggestions.
all the difference. You
It's
know,
it's
even
huge.
even if you
Uh,
think your story is really good, and even if your story really is good, uh, uh, working with an editor can add so much to that experience and to that story. You really don't know until you do it. Um,
yes,
I just wish people would invest more in themselves and believe
I
in
have been,
themselves
yeah.
to
I have been in a lot of projects where we do some, anthology projects where we swap editing among authors.
mhm.
And I've really worked on my skills there to look at other stories and to notice when the flow stops, to notice when words don't match, when the plot has holes, or doesn't seem logical, when just something doesn't follow. So I know how important that is, and I really know how important it is to tell the author in a way that is supportive,
Mhm.
that is not not getting out the hammer and just bashing the story to pieces, but just sort of slipping in suggestions and saying, this sentence could
Yeah,
be used more.
that's, an editor really needs to be, well, tactful to a certain
Yes.
extent, but the writer also has to put in their 50% too, and take those
Yeah.
critiques the way they're meant to be taken, not as a
Yes.
personal attack, because that definitely isn't it. It should
Yeah.
always all be about the story. For
And
me,
I think that's an important. How can I say that? I think it's something an editor has to have. In coaching, we call it rapport. It's the ability to connect with your client
mhm,
and to sort of adjust and adapt to their level of being and thinking. And I believe that would be a very good ability for an editor as well to really handle that connection, to know you're working with a person. And writers are notorious for being mimosas about their stories. So,
no,
no, I am. I know I am.
dang.
The one that gets me though is somebody's like, okay, I want an editor who's really cheap. And I'm always like, really? This is your story. You
Well,
don't you don't want
do you go? Well, everybody wants everything the cheapest they can get it, but I mean, when you hire a plumber or mechanic for your car, is that the first thing out of your mouth? Give me somebody cheap. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You're fixing my. Uh,
yeah. No, I know.
you
I
know,
don't understand it.
there are always options. You can go on a payment plan. You can sell your firstborn. Actually, when you break it down, it's not inexpensive, and it shouldn't be. It's a skill set that should be compensated. Mm,
Yeah, I know. Not I'm
yeah,
you wouldn't start a business.
you get what you pay for. It's the thing. So if you're going to invest, you know what really pisses me off is when somebody spends like $2,000 on a freaking book cover
Yeah.
and they haven't edited. Those
Yeah.
those people I want to slap. You better edit that out.
Well, you didn't say any names, but yeah,
No.
no, I think that indie authors aren't doing themselves a favor by saying, well, the two things that I hear are, I have to get it out so fast, I don't have time for editing, right? Or I have the 3 beta readers and my spell check.
Oh my
The
god.
other one that I hear is, well, they're not editing trade published books either. And I'm like, okay, I need you to point me to these books because I haven't read a trade pubbed book recently that has anywhere near the number
I
of
have.
errors that I'm seeing in indie
I
books.
have. I have seen
Uh,
OCR copies of print books that were not edited at
I
all.
want send me names because
Yeah, check any ebook by Mercedes Lackey that has been published. I'm not going to throw out publishers' names,
yeah,
but
no, I know.
she has had her stuff um, digitized, and I bought them for my Kindle, and they have been severely non-edited. She has some.
This OCR? I mean, this is an honest question. Are these problems coming in from OCR? Okay.
Yes, they are. And seriously, I can't imagine Trad Publishing not. They look completely unedited. They have spelling errors in there. They haven't even spell checked the books. And it's because they're kicking out ebooks. They're making tons of money with ebooks. They want them out there because the readers are buying them up. And they're not paying for it, even copy editing. And
what about recently published books that are being edited at the same time for paper? And I'm last couple I picked up
published books.
It's I'm not seeing the same level of. I mean, maybe Annetta has seen it and I just haven't.
I actually bought a Stephen King book, hardcover, not too long ago, and I haven't even cracked it open yet because I've been too busy to read it. But I will definitely let you know, because when we were talking about big authors that got to the point where they said they didn't need an editor anymore, I would put him on the list.
Yeah, well, we can talk. I went on a rampage recently about a Stephen King book.
I love Stephen King like you would not believe. I've been reading him forever.
Oh yeah, he was one of my major influences.
Yes, I love his work, but I'm telling you, those are the books that have red pen marks in them because I've edited the shit out of them. I can't stand it.
Yeah, well, we can talk because I have had problems recently. Yeah. But I didn't notice any misspellings in it. Let me put it that way.
But, you know, as far as proofreading and copy editing goes, you know, they probably have in-house people that do that. I don't think they use developmental editors as much as they used to.
Yeah, that I would buy.
You know, I think that.
And I used to read a series. I can't think. Oh, Alistair MacLean, and I'm pretty sure they had ghostwriters at the end. And I used to love the stories, and I have to admit, I got a lot of them from the library. And the further I got into the series, the more boring the whole stories they all became. They lost their intensity. They lost their originality. It was getting very clear to me, and that's years ago, before I even really started writing myself. The stories were all following the same outline. They all had the same structure, and you could basically exchange all the characters. You could exchange the major threat to the world, but the whole story arcs, the whole action was always the same. And I stopped reading that. And I cut my teeth.
Well, that's been going on for years and years and years. It's been going on since I was.
Oh, I stopped reading Star Trek novels. I used to love Star Trek novels. They've gotten so useless, so uninteresting.
It's, of course, then you come out with something new and unusual like Chuck Wendig's Star Wars novel, and you see what happens there.
Yep.
Yes. Come on, audience. What is it you're looking for?
That's one of the things I like so much about indie publishing is the blurring of the genre lines. Because it used to be if you had anything that was different or unusual or combined, whatever, you know, you would get notices from New York. Because I have queried before. I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. But they would tell you there's no place in the market for this. Nobody's going to read it. We'll never sell it. But in indie publishing, you can take romance and throw it into steampunk and, you know, like you said with Chuck Wendig, and next thing you know, you're the next superstar. And even if not, you come out with a really great, interesting story that finds its niche and people buy it, hopefully. So I really love that blurring of the genre lines. I like finding something unusual or original that really gets me excited.
Do you find that a lot of writers are doing original stuff? Because a lot of the advice that I see now is
right
at the top of your genre and do that.
look it. Don't write to the market, because by the time you get done,
The market has shifted out.
done. You can't do that, and your stuff is going to come across as inauthentic. Readers can feel that. They can tell. If you've been trying to write to market and you aren't selling anything, and you're not getting reviews, or you're not whatever, it's because you're not writing from an authentic place, and your readers can feel it, and that is the truth. You know, write what you love. Write what you want to read. Write what what you think that nobody else has ever thought of before, because that's where you'll find your success. I can give you a list of people that have done that and are successful mid-list authors, and a lot of them are moving upwards even further. So the blurring of the genre lines, yeah, put me down. I love it. Bring it on.
I do too. I totally love it. I always loved urban fantasy, which was one of the first places where genre lines were getting blurred.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the 90s, I mean, people were starting to write urban fantasy, and I loved it because, I mean, Mercedes Lackady loved that, and I read Tolkien, I read all the old thriller people, and I loved her Diane Treguard series, even though I read one of the books that really would have needed a development. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely noticing the lack of, and I guess I would really say that developmental editing in this context is like structuring the whole thing, telling
Yes.
a coherent story.
Yes.
As opposed to the, as I've complained about before, the one darn thing after another.
Yeah.
Which,
You just can't throw a werewolf in there and see if it'll work.
Should be a good reason for him to be there.
Okay, no werewolves.
Writing about vampires today. Well, they were so yesterday, and the werewolves are starting to, shuffle in and shuffle out, and what shapeshifters, and if you can do it and pull it off, good. God bless you.
Okay. Well, do you have any
This has been fun.
concluding comments, Annetta, that you would like to tell?
Well, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for not,
Yes, our hard-hitting expose of indie editors.
My hands are still sweating. Isn't that funny? I don't know. Any last words? God, it sounds almost like I'm going to give myself a eulogy. No,
Well,
you need a developmental editor. You need a good one. Then come and see me. I'm all over the internet. Other than that, keep writing.
your editor is your
Best friend.
co-worker, your best friend,
Teammate.
not your antagonist.
Exactly. I am not the enemy. I am not the enemy. I'm on your side.
The mentor clothed in the clothing of...
Psychologist, mother, bottle washer, cheerleading team.
I'm always sending my editors email like, this is terrible, I hate everything, why do I even bother?
I know.
And then she sends back something very supportive, and I've been there, it's okay.
Or whack.
Keep working.
Well, we have surpassed the hour, in fact.
Yeah.
I would like to thank our guest today, Annetta Ribken, editor extraordinaire, for joining us and discussing the editing process.
Sure thing.
For the 21st Century Writer Podcast, my name is Diane Patterson.
And I'm Hannah Steinbach.
And we will talk to you again soon. Bye!